Mark is a guy out of Tennessee, and Mark has a hard science question that may have religious implications. Mark wants a rejoinder to the argument that when an embryo starts, there's a word. Hey, Mark, why don't you tell us what you want to say? Because I don't know what this says. It's not your fault.
I hope I can explain it to you.
Yeah, please do. Give it a try.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes. Loud and clear.
Yes. Okay, good. Long-time atheist, first-time caller.
Ooh.
Let me see. My question is kind of a hard science question, but I think it has theological implications, and so I think there's an answer, and I'm hoping you can remember what the answer is, because I certainly don't. All right. So let me start off by saying that okay. So we got a sperm meeting an egg and forming a cell.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the beginning of a person, I guess.
Well.
All right. And so the cell starts dividing.
Yeah, starts dividing. Sure.
But when it first starts dividing, there's no differentiation between any of it. It's just a clump of cells.
Right. That's right.
Right. Okay. And so then all of a sudden, it starts differentiating, and the first structure that starts differentiating is the anus, which I find weirdly appropriate.
Well, it's following suit with how the rest of our lives go, always. Right. Yeah.
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 Yeah. Well, all right. So anyway, we've got this, and what I'm thinking is that a smart theist would say, well, when it starts differentiating, that's when the cell enters this clump of cells.
When the soul enters
and becomes a human being.
The soul, not this. You said cell.
I don't think I was talking to a biologist about this one time, and he didn't know why either. It's not like it's I don't know that it's even been solved yet. And so, and I'm hoping that I haven't set off a bunch of theists, talking to you about this. And because I'm like I said, I'm not sure what is the answer to that question then. How do you say, well, I don't think it's the soul entering this clump of cells. It's just that's the way things are.
Oh,
and that seems like an incredibly weak answer.
Well, I guess
so.
If I may, Mark, some people would say someone said that's the point. I don't know why that's the point. That's probably a couple days in, or maybe a couple weeks in. I don't know if when the inside and the outside happens, the anus and the non-anus parts of the human or whatever. What is it? A ootid? Otid? Is that a zygote? I don't even know what it is at that point. But they would have to prove that a soul exists, don't you think?
Well, I would guess so, except that they're saying, well, it starts differentiating because the soul is there.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
But isn't it their job to prove that? Why is it your job to disprove that?
I don't know. Is it? I don't know.
Well, they're making the claim. They're making the claim that a soul exists. You could equally make you could equally make the claim that at the time that the cells start differentiating, that is the trigger point to when an individual can, wield Excalibur. If it's just a story. It's just a thing that they said. You have to prove that Excalibur is a thing.
Right.
And go ahead, Sid.
I think there's this, and I've talked about this on other platforms before, but I think there's this misconception that because somebody presents their idea to you, you then have to prove that that's not true. When in reality, if they're the ones presenting that idea, they need to prove, if they're expecting this conversation to happen, they need to prove that a soul exists. They need to be the one that says, this is when I think the soul enters the body or the zygote or the clump of cells, and they also need to back that up with why or how do they know this, or where does this information come from. But I think we've, as a society, just gone in this direction where we think if we're confronted with an idea that's different than ours, it then becomes our job to prove our point, and that's just not how that works. Right? It's like when you're approached at the mall and the perfume person's like, do you want to buy this? And you're like, hey, I'm going to keep walking. And they go, no, why not? Why aren't you buying this? Right? That's not what happens. That they have to convince you should buy it, and why it's great and why it's worth your time. So when somebody says something like that, I think this is when the soul enters the zygote or the clump of cells or the body or whatever. That's their job then to prove that that's true. And if they don't want to do it, fine, but I'm not having this conversation with them then. If they're not going to do the bare minimum of tell me why they're correct, then I'm not going to try and disprove them.
Yeah.
Well, I guess what bothers me about that answer is that it's because biologists themselves don't know why this happens. You know, it's not like science has got an answer as to why.
That doesn't mean that spirits are real, because scientists don't know.
Yeah.
Do you like that? Doesn't just because scientists can't prove it doesn't mean therefore spirits are real and souls are real.
Yeah. And Mark, you don't believe in the existence of the soul, do you?
Sorry?
You don't believe in the... Do you believe in the existence of the soul? It says you're an atheist, but do you believe in a soul?
No, I don't.
Okay.
No.
So...
No.
So they could say it's the midichlorians that are doing it. It's the force is what's causing the soul, or the inside and the outside, the cells to differentiate. And they say, well, the force isn't real.
Freudian slip there.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we got a quote for what the force is. You just go back to, the original movie. We can say what it is, but they're saying that this thing that they believe exists is the cause of a phenomenon. We have this all the time. We heard it earlier. We've had callers say this, the source of morality is it's been whispered into our hearts, or it's been etched on our hearts by Yahweh or whatever the frick they believe in this century. And like, okay, cool. Prove that Vishnu exists or whatever. Prove that Ahura Mazda exists, or whoever is in charge of the Korean fertility god of the harvest exists. If that's your go-to god, prove that they exist, because you can't. To quote many others on this show, you can't answer a thing by appealing to another unknown thing. You have to. That's a real paraphrase for you. We don't agree that other thing exists. If we did, we would be in agreement right now. So now you have to prove to me that the Korean harvest god exists, and they haven't done that. They've just said a thing. Right. And if I could, real quick, I'm sorry. Go ahead. In improv, you just kind of go with whatever was said, right?
Yes, and.
Yes.
Right.
And you continue with it, and you go absurdly in whatever direction it takes you. It's a good time. In conversations, we kind of do that too. And I warn my witnesses, my expert witnesses and my lay witnesses, when you're being deposed, when you're on the stand, this is like, there's a kind of analogous to this conversation you're having, maybe. The natural tendency to accept as many presumptions as you possibly can to keep the conversation going will work against you. Because when you start disagreeing, when you start pushing back, that's when you risk that conflict. You risk being unmutual, being uncooperative. And so the person who asserts these highfalutin, weird concepts of make-believe or totally real things, who knows, they're either intentionally or unintentionally relying upon the natural human tendency to keep the ball rolling in conversation to make their point. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I think we get some of these callers. You've probably seen the show. I know you have. You've seen the callers that come in. The wheels are already, they're revving it up. I don't know if you're a car guy, Mark, but you ever done a brake stand when you were a teenager?
I love fast cars. I actually like motorcycles also. So that's Yes, but go ahead.
Me too. I love motorcycles as well. But you've done a brake stand at some point in your life, right?
What kind did you
What's that?
have? Never mind. I said, what kind did you have?
Well, I have a
Don't worry about
1976 Honda CB550, but when I was young,
Really?
I did a bunch of brake
Really?
stands.
Really?
And
Okay, cool.
those of you out in
Go
the
ahead.
audience who don't know what a brake stand is, it's not important, but you hold on the brakes and you floor it. And if you got a rear-wheel drive car, you got the back wheels smoking. I know it's not responsible. I know it's just
Yep.
stupid because it's going to wear your tires out, and it's against the law probably. But we get these callers who jump in here, and they're talking like they're in debate class, and they're trying to get as many words out before we stop them because they have all these points and they use as many big words as they possibly can. And they're like, hold on, wait. This ain't debate class, okay? Ben Shapiro. This is a conversation that we're having, and there's no judges out there that are going to score you with how many multisyllabic words you use. Slow down. Everything you're saying needs to be open to inquiry and cross-examination and stuff like that. And so don't let them get away with it. You can approach these people in a friendly way and say, well, can you prove that the soul exists? Because I'm not sure that I can. You don't even have to say you don't believe it. You can say, I'm not sure that I can. I'm not sure I understand what you even mean by the soul. And also, how does the soul, if it even did exist, how does that cause the cells to differentiate? Like with telekinesis?
Well, I don't know. That's the that's the answer I would have to give. Hell if I know.
There's all these questions. We had people, remember one of my first times on one of these shows, that was a dude talking about chrysocolla, a little gemstone, not a gemstone, like a mineral that gave him +2 charisma. It's one of my, I think it was my first time on the Nonprofits, actually. And so, well, we started talking about reincarnation and stuff like that. Well, how does that work? How does that work? No one has an answer, but they just assume it does. I was talking to a friend of mine sometime recently, asking me, what sign is this person I was talking about? And I was like, I don't know. How, but let's say I did know. How would that work? All this magic shit. How does it work? No one ever has an answer for it. They don't want to answer that question. You know, they just want to keep rolling along without you asking those difficult questions. And if you do, well, now you're the difficult one, right? Mm-hmm. They're the one slapping you in the face with some magic shit. But if you ask a question about it, now you're the one who's the jerk, right? So.
Yeah. And I would like to point out also that even
Sydney, go ahead.
Even in a debate class or a real debate class or on a real debate team, that wouldn't fly either. They're bad debaters. They're really bad debaters. But yeah, I just wanted to restate one more time that just because somebody says, I think that this is the soul, doesn't mean that by saying you don't know any better answer for that, that's not conceding that it's the soul. Or I think this is God's work. What do you think, atheist? And you're like, I don't have evidence to support anything about this. That doesn't mean, oh, that means it's God. But they're honing in on, or they're banking on the idea that either somebody will get so flustered they'll speak incorrectly, or they'll take the bait, or they'll be working so hard to defend themselves they won't realize it's not even their job to defend that point. Or they're banking on the fact that you'll go, oh, okay, these are the two options, when in reality they say it's the soul, you say I don't know. There's no proven point there. Nobody wins, or nobody leaves there the correct one, because it could be the flying spaghetti monster, it could be the weather, it could be literally anything, it could be Legos, it could be literally anything. But until we have evidence to support what it actually is, neither side is correct just because that person decided that if you can't answer that question, they're right.
Yeah. Hey, Mark, there's another real stupid one I hear sometimes, and actually some friends of mine who might be watching who are actually either married already. I think they're married already. Yeah. They deserve each other. All right. Anyway, that somebody was saying,
Yeah,
like,
thank you very much for your time. I don't know. I mean, that,
right? I don't. Yeah, thank you very much.
I guess.
But like,
It just, you know, I'm guessing that if I utter that phrase,
yeah,
most theists are going to laugh at my face, and you know,
they could.
Not be well. Of course, I guess it's not up to me to convince them, but
they could. But you know, real quick, just to build on this,
it won't hurt you.
Just to build on this, Mark, just to finish the point I wanted to make, is kind of where this interlocutor is going. Either the soul, that's when the soul enters the cells, or it's not. There are two choices. It's this explanation, or it's this other non-explanation. So it's a 50-50 chance that that's not how it works. That's like saying either you're going to win the lottery or you're not going to win the lottery. Two choices. That means I have a 50-50 chance of winning the lottery. That means I should buy a ticket. That's not how it works. That's not how anything works in the world. So, yeah, don't fall into the trap of having to come up with an answer. They've been giving it a lot of thought. That's another thing about some religious folks and other people too. They're jonesing to ask a question. They've been thinking about it. They've been stewing on this particular thing. And then they come up to you, and then they find a way to work it into a conversation, and then they hit you with it, right? Well, maybe you should have a chance to stew about it for a couple of months or years like they have before you have to come up with an answer. And so don't be afraid to say, interesting question. I'll get back to you on it.
Okay.
All right, Mark.
All right. Thanks very much.
Thanks a lot. Take care.
Go vote if you haven't voted.
Do participate in the world that we live in every way. Do what you got to do.